we can talk about how Dana White just fucking
hates his guts.
Well, there was a lot of talk at first about, oh, well, Matt Riddle's out of WWE, maybe going back to UFC, huh? And then Dana White dropped this. I just got to say, I love Dana White. He just, another guy, kind of along the lines of what we were saying. He gives a fuck about what he does.
Yeah.
And you can feel it when he talks. So this was him, I think, being questioned about Matt Riddle.
The guy fights on prelims. You know, does Matt Riddle sell any more tickets? Does he sell any more pay-per-views? The guy's fighting on the prelims, okay? He's fighting his way up to get the opportunity to possibly someday become a big star in the sport. Then he comes out and says, we treated him horrible. He's treated so horrible here. You were making $162,000 a year. He's making something like $52,000 or $54,000 a fight, and you fight 3 times a year. Unless you get injured or something like that happens. We have health insurance here, which has never been done in the history of the world with fight promoters, okay? Now, the reason he's not in the UFC anymore is because he could not pass a drug test. The guy couldn't pass a drug test, okay? So he couldn't, and think about this. You have to go to work 3 times a year, and you couldn't pass a drug test? You're so weak-minded and so addicted to marijuana that you couldn't stay off it enough to pass a drug test 3 times a year. Well, guess what, dummy? They drug test in the real world, too. You think you're going to go to work 325 days a year and not get drug tested? Right? He couldn't pass a drug test 3 times a year, but he's going to pass it in the real world. Right? And I want to...
Actually, that is where he's kind of wrong, though, because companies aren't really paying for drug tests anymore.
Yeah.
I think they're like, what, $250 a pop or something like that?
Something to that.
Yeah. Companies are just hiring. And plus... medical marijuana now, they're not even testing for that. But it's more strict in sports for obvious reasons. So he's a little wrong there, but
I don't know where this rocket scientist is going to go and make $100,000 a year, right? And also, this is the guy, Matt Riddle, who did an interview and said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and children.
Oh, my.
Oh, my.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I want to point out, MMA Junkie, the people that did this story took one side of the story, and they're writing this big story about a guy who said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and kids, and only got his side of the story. Real journalism. Real journalism.
Yeah, not surprised by that. That's one thing that we don't see.
Jeez. So you're saying there's a chance, like the Jim Carrey thing? It doesn't sound like Matt Riddle's going to UFC anytime soon.
It doesn't look like Matt Riddle was accepted in UFC anytime soon.
And, you know, minus all the drug shit and the beating the wife stuff and all that, a really important thing he did say, though, too, is that Matt Riddle doesn't move tickets. People don't pay to go see Matt Riddle.
Mm.
And I think he's saying that from his standpoint in the UFC. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there was the time, I guess, the RK Bro thing, but I don't know if people were, I wasn't that into it, so I don't know if people were paying to go see that. They were moving merch though, right?
Yeah.
So.
They're moving merch. He had his little run, but it was with Randy.
A lot of people would say that you could attribute that to Randy. Yeah, I mean, again, I said it earlier. Matt Riddle really brought all this on himself. He's, yeah. And I also don't think it's just marijuana.
You think it's more?
I think he's on coke or something. Because again, WWE doesn't test for weed anymore, and he couldn't pass the drug test still. I don't think he's that big to where he's doing steroids. He looks kind of like naturally.
It's probably on painkillers.
Maybe. But
no, I'm not getting into that before we get a strike.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Medical misinformation. Yeah, and then, you know, all his drama, he just had to stay out of trouble. That's really all it was.
He needed to stay off of whatever the fuck he was on.
Yeah.
Like Donna said, you couldn't do it for 3 times at the year though. That's at least the accurate part of what he said.
It's just 3
Yeah.
times a year. But I guess, don't they test like 3 months out kind of shit?
Who knows when they test?
They might just test right before.
Yeah.
Right before. So, yeah, I think unless Matt Riddle gets picked up by AEW, which I think is a huge possibility because they don't give a fuck about anything. They have no standards. They'll pick them up. They'll pick them up and fucking push them.
Jungle, bro.
You know what? You might be right because they'll see that as a big push.